Okay, let me ask you, do we have a phone to make a call or no? I got a guy, my sergeant from the Army just texted me from from 1998, which, by the way...
Did he ever find out if...
Is he still going to that club? How long has he lived in Nashville?
Here's what's crazy. If he's listening, he actually went to that club with me, but I don't... I have a story of his, but I'm not going to tell it. Maybe he'll tell it, but maybe he's not going to tell it. It's a pretty crazy story. But, here, let me get Felix, if you're ready, I'm calling you. Text me and tell me yes. I'll call you if you're ready. Freaking one of the
How many times
guys.
did this guy scream at you?
Who?
This guy we're calling.
Oh, by the way, let me just tell you, do you know what his size is? Felix, let's see if he's on or listening to this before I call this guy. Felix is, oh my gosh, Felix, I got like a billion stories.
Did you say he was like your corporal, or who was he? An officer?
Sergeant.
I was a specialist. He was a sergeant, and he was the sergeant of supply. All right, let's see if we can get a hold of this guy.
We hear dance music in the background.
Felix Gutierrez, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself, Patrick?
I am doing good, man. So what's the word? What are you thinking about what's going on here with Afghanistan? Tell the audience who you are, tell our relationship, and give us your idea about what's going on in Afghanistan.
So Patrick, I saw your video, and of course, rest of the world, I'm sure they look at those videos and are in shock. I mean, I've had a lot of family and friends, and even people I serve with. Just kind of give a little bit of my background. Like you were saying, I'm 20 years, Army retired. I have 5 combat tours, 3 of them being in Afghanistan, or actually 3 being in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. So I spent over 4 years of my life, in the Middle East between 2003 and 2011. Our relationship, me and Patrick, we served together back at Fort Campbell, back in the day. And, I remember you telling me stories about life, in Iran growing up. And so, as far as, I didn't get that perspective of living in the Middle East until, of course, I spent, a good chunk of my life there. And, what I see is just tragic. It's unfortunate. And like I think I put on your post, the fact that, when I hopped on a plane, I remember the colonel briefing us. I'm there in the hangar at Fort Campbell.
Yep.
And it was like, how many of you guys been to Iraq? And, of course, I raised my hand. It was my second tour at the time. I did 3 tours total. And he was like, a lot of you think you might know what you're stepping into, but like when you go to Afghanistan, it's a completely different world. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And of course, he said, it's kind of like the time has stood still. So until I was in charge of, Afghanistan detail, where I was in charge of basically 10 people we worked at entry control points. And so, I dealt with them every day. I fed them, I've trained them. And it was just blew me away, just how far they were behind to the modern world. So
Felix, can you paint a picture for the rest of us? Iraq, Afghanistan. So modernized education, level of lifestyle, what it was like. Maybe paint a picture for some that don't know.
Okay, so I mean, I guess the best way I can put it is like, my parents originally grew up in Mexico, right? And so when as an American I'd go to Mexico, I would always be in shock of like, it's like a kind of a second world country, it's just not as developed as America, the technology, infrastructure. And when I went to Iraq, I kind of identified it as kind of like, I would say, not say like Mexico, but as far as just infrastructure and the people and the education, but maybe just a little bit behind. But when you go to Afghanistan, I mean, Patrick, it's literally like you're going 3,000 years back in time.
Wow.
I mean, I know people will say, well, they see the buildings, they see all that. Yep. But I'm talking about the everyday individual, the people, the farmers, the countrymen, the people that are out there. They're just literally behind the modern world. I mean, even when I went to Iraq, I remember I was in charge of interpreters. So I remember they used to tell me in Iraq, now think about this perspective, that they were shut off to the rest of the world. They weren't able to have only certain channels, right? So Saddam Hussein controlled the information flow that came in there. So their perspective of Americans was completely different until we were there and they saw how friendly we were, how they were there to help them. When they were given that, or they're shut off to the rest of the world. They don't know what the rest of the world looks like, if that makes any sense.
No, of course. Now, Felix, so you being there and amongst all the other soldiers, you're around officers, you're around sergeant majors, you're around sergeant first class, first sergeants, captains, colonels, generals, you're around all these guys. Behind closed doors, when it's just sitting around shooting, you're just having a conversation together. What was the position of most of the soldiers? I'm talking more the leadership, not necessarily those who are not leading. Is there position amongst each other? Why the hell are we here in the first place? This should have never happened. What the hell are we doing? It's a waste of money. We could be back. It's costing so many people's lives. Or was it more from the standpoint of we got to do our part to help? It's so necessary for us to be here. If we weren't here, it'd be such a shit show. It'd be much worse. What was the language of leaders? Not victims and complainers who don't want to be there, who can't wait to come back. I'm talking those who are aspirational leaders that one day want to move up in the ranks in the military. What was the conversation behind closed doors?
I mean, honestly, I really feel that even as leaders, even for some of the soldiers, is like, you might join the military for different reasons, and respect for whatever they join for. But once you go there, I mean, you're a human, Patrick. I mean, you should know this, right? You're like, wow, I can't believe people live like this, or they have lives like this. And so, I think overall, for a lot, the sentiment is what basically you're looking for. Is that we realize that this is a real problem, and the fact that if we don't change, and I think I send you a text saying that we need to be there for 100 years, and I know of course that's going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money. I know there's people that have to go there and serve, but it's not just America's problem; it's the world's problem. And I feel that.
Got it. So Felix, your position is that we should have never pulled out of this last week or 10 days ago. We shouldn't have pulled out.
I mean, from a humanitarian, I'm sure as people look at in awe, right? I mean, of course, I don't write the checkbook, and I know that that's a cost to American taxpayers, and I know there's people that actually have to go there and serve and potentially risk their lives. But I think from a humanitarian effort, I mean, you're looking at it that these are people and individuals like anyone else, and until you're there and see it and realize like how good you have it here in America. And you should know that. You're telling me the stories of when you used to get bombed there in Iran, but it is just completely opposite out there. And it's like when you see the kids and they're just like, you give them. I have a picture, and I wish I had it. And this is in Iraq, so this is back in 2003 when I was convoying back from being there, and I remember stopping on our convoy literally like 5 a.m. And some kid ran up to me, and I'm literally like giving, and he was just like, "Can I get he was like water?" And I gave him a bottle of water. And you thought I would have given this guy, this kid, $10,000. I mean, it's just a different mindset. And until you have that experience, I think it's very moving. And people, I think overall, even the world, I mean, even as Americans, I think we're very empathetic to people's causes. And of course, we want to help a lot of people. And I know it's tough. Someone's got to step up, but I don't think it's just America's responsibility. It's the world's responsibility.
Hey, Felix. Sorry, buddy.
Go ahead.
This is Tom. This is Tom Zenner. I have a quick question for you with your perspective fighting the Taliban when you were deployed there. What potential do they have to actually change? Do you buy this, that they could be a different version of the Taliban right now? And B, what would realistically happen to any Americans or contractors that work for America as interpreter or anything else? What would happen to them if they were left behind and not rescued?
I'll be honest. I mean, the hatred, from them is that's all they know. That's all they've been raised on. When I said they have to be there for 100 years, you have to change a mindset, and that doesn't happen. I mean, think about it. I was there in 2008 to 2009 for 13 months, and it's just completely different mindset. You have to go in there and change. It's a generational thing. And when I say 100 years, these people just think different.
Well, I was mainly wondering, will the Taliban kill any Americans or their contractors left behind? Are their lives in danger if we don't get them out? And do you believe the Taliban can change?
From my perspective, I would say yes. I would say yes, they would be, because they were grown to hate Americans, and they don't know any better. I mean, they think we're there to take their resources and change their way of life and their ideology. And if they feel that way, I mean, they don't think anything about us. I mean, it's just their language of how they speak.
Felix, a follow-up question for you. Here's a follow-up question for you. Let's get a little bit more logical. So all this stuff you said, I'm fully with you. I totally I remember when I got on the flight, the Lufthansa flight, when I left Iran, July 15th of 89, and we crossed the border, and the flight attendant says, we can officially serve alcohol. Everybody started cheering and clapping because they finally felt free. You did not feel free until it left the Iranian border. That's when we finally felt free. So I understand that part of it. But the other part of it, some people may say, Well, we got 800 military bases in 70 plus countries. China's got one military base by Suez Canal. Djibouti is their base that they have in Djibouti, and we got all these other bases. We're spending all this money. We're spending all this taxpayers' money. Should we go out there and try to solve every country's problems, or should we let them handle it themselves?
I mean, to be honest with you, if it's you think it might not be our problem, but if they're harboring, terrorism and they view us as the enemy, whether you want to believe it or not, in our eyes, we never would have believed 9/11 would have ever happened. Prior to 9/11, that was unconceivable, Patrick. But now it's conceivable, if that makes any sense.
Of course.
So what I think, in my perspective, is that whether we like it or not, and what it costs, if we ignore that, then what it could potentially harbor will make 9/11 be even worse. I mean, think about what happened with COVID. I mean, God forbid if they had the intelligence or had the technology to harbor, biological warfare. If anything, the world is taught that's the real threat. You know what I'm saying?
How strongly do you feel about our military today? Like today, how strong do you feel about the policies we're making today with the military? Like, do you feel safer today than you did maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Tell me about how you're feeling right now with being safer today than it was 10 or 20 years ago.
Patrick, that's a great question. I'll share this with you. My son is currently in the Army. My oldest son, as a matter of fact, he's serving at Fort Campbell, the place that we served together. So, I have friends that are still in, and the perspective, that I get is that, the military is very dynamic, just like it should be. It's constantly changing, sometimes changing for the good, sometimes changing for the bad. And just the direction, even when I got out, I got out in 2013 when I retired after 20 years, is that, that we're trying to be, and this is, quote me if I'm crazy if you say that, I think we're just trying to be too, overly sensitive. I mean, unfortunately, the military is not a business. It's not a public organization. I think that's how they're trying to run it today, to be everyone politically correct. It's tough. I mean, I know our leaders have a tough job. Whether I don't want to be, critical of the commander in chief. The best you can do is say, hey, when I was in the Army, we're going to support him 100%. That's our job, especially being a leader. And it's honestly, I think if we ignore that problem, it might not affect us now, but it might affect us 10 years from now.
So you think another 9/11 is imminent, and the chances of it increased?
Yeah, absolutely increased. I don't know percentage-wise, but I mean,
yeah.
Look at they were waiting in the wings for years for us to pull out.
Well, Felix, can I? First of all, what I'm curious about is when are you running for mayor, Senate, Congress, governor? When you're running for some kind of political stuff?
It's funny,
What's the
Patrick.
story?
When I moved to Texas, when I visit you in California, and you were hinting about moving to Texas.
Yeah.
I don't know what they put in the water here. I'll be honest with you. I absolutely love it here in Texas. The people are great. Just to think about it, I literally live like probably 15 miles where Tesla's building a new factory.
Right, where are you? You're in Austin, right? If I remember,
Austin,
we met in
Austin.
Austin.
So if I move for mayor, if I run for political office, I think I'll start off as mayor and then work my way up.
Well, do your thing, buddy. I mean, and Felix, listen. Shit's going to come out. People are going to know how hard you party. By the way, you can't hide that stuff because. When can I tell the people a couple stories about you? Is that okay with you?
Absolutely, Patrick. Absolutely. Honestly, I'll be honest with you. I tell stories to my kids, and 99% of them are positive.
Let me put it to you this way.
Story. We went to spring break together, but we'll share that for another.
Which one is that? Is that La Villa? Is that Panama City?
Yeah, I told them when you were doing that dance contest, and then all of a sudden, you jumped in the pool.
Hard body contest. Yeah. I remember that. I forgot about that one until you brought it up. But we drove, and you remember when we had
trophies in your office, isn't it?
But what's crazy about this? By the way, that club was a legit club. Club La Villa was the whole MTV rap, all that stuff that they were doing it. But we drove. This is how bad the situation was. We had a truck that only would fit 3 people. Me, Bradford, and Felix would sit in the front. In the back for 9 hours, 4 people were sleeping off the back.
Wow.
And we would drive. Obviously, this stuff is illegal. We don't recommend it. Kids, please do not do this. One of these days, the Romney thing that he had, that story's going to come back for us.
Hell of a bar, man.
I tell you,
crossing
if
the
there
border.
is a guy you want to party with, it's Felix. Felix is the guy you want to party with. Felix was a guy, he would have 25 beers the night before, and he would go outrun everybody the next day at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I hate those
That's
guys.
freaking Felix.
Oh, I hate those
He
guys.
would run
Yeah.
5-minute miles, 6-minute miles, just piss everybody off, do all the push-ups, score perfect PT score, and then at night we'd have 12 beers together. And by the way, Felix and I, we watch Cocktails together. Felix, how many times have we watched
just
the movie
watched it the
Cocktails?
other day, Patrick.
Dude, we watched that thing probably like 100 times. We watch Cocktails nonstop. And there's a certain, we watch, what was it? Cocktails? What was a Patrick Swayze movie you had?
Roadhouse.
We watch Roadhouse, and there's a few movies we would watch. And
Hey, Patrick, speaking of movies, I want to kind of give you, if you ever want, I know you're doing your Mafia
Yeah.
with your Mafia movie. I've got some good perspective of Goodfellas that no one's ever done before. If you ever want to sit down and do
I'm good with
the
that. We will do
autopsy of
something.
Goodfellas, I'm your guy.
we will, I am definitely looking forward to that. One of these days, you got to come out to Florida. We'll do something together. But Felix, good to have you on, brother. Give everybody my best.
You said Florida. You moved to Florida now?
I'm in Florida, right? I'm in Fort Lauderdale right now. I don't live in Texas anymore. I'm in Fort Lauderdale. I've been here for, what is it now? 7 months, 6 months, 7 months? We've been down here, Florida.
Well, I definitely know Anita said that she wanted to do the Valuetainment tour, so we'll definitely come out that way to Florida sometime and get the tour and get a chance to catch up. So thank you for having me on the show. I wish my best for you and your family, and hopefully we'll have a chance to catch up soon, okay?
Appreciate you, buddy. Take care. Bye-bye, bye-bye. What a freaking guy, man. This guy, he was a pool hustler, sick player. Like when I took, maybe he was the best player on the entire base out of 30,000 soldiers. But we'd go to a place. Here's what this guy would do. He's 5'6", 125 pounds, Felix. We'd go to a billiard hall or pool hall, right? He would start, talking trash to everybody. And here's what he would do. He would say something. Say something. And then,
Like challenge him.
Challenging
I
people.
dare you. Okay.
I'm on the other side. He says, say something. You see that guy? That guy's my friend. Go ahead.
Funny.
Say it. And he would fight everybody. And then I'm like, Felix. And
You're just trying to hang out, man.
yeah,
It's
like, dude, I just want to have a drink.
Come on.
Say something. Watch what's going to happen. We're going to destroy you. And we had these.
Let me ask you,
Yeah.
when it's always awkward, man. Like, do former veterans, do you like when people like thank you for your service, when they're like thank you for your service?
It's a little weird.
Is it weird or not?
But I tell you, when somebody does that, it's also you want to be appreciated. You want somebody to value. This is 20 years you're talking about. By the way, one of the stories you didn't talk about, he was in a Humvee when they went over, and I don't know what it was. Felix drove. There was like an explosion, and he was in there. He saw this stuff.
Wow.
So it messes with you a little bit.
Sure.
And when you get out of it right now, he's been away from it for nearly a decade. But when you get out of it at first, it's mentally and emotionally challenging. So, yeah, but it does, it's always great when people say that. So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.